Yeah, but it's not.
It's not quiet. I know how we can start it. That wasn't a joke. Okay. All right. So, just one financial forum planned this fall this year. Last year we had, actually the last several years we had two, usually because we had special projects on the docket, like Plum and Retail and so forth. A finance committee reserve fund transfer request. I put that up front so that the staff who are here just for that request can go home. Then we will go on to the Sharon's presentation on our financial forecasting, free cash projections, headline presentation here. We are scheduled to have a presentation from the CPA, that's the Community Consideration Act Study Committee. Yes.
Calls to order.
Oh yeah, right, I need to do a roll call for call to order. So I'll do my roll. That's all right. All right, let's do a finance committee roll call. By the way, I do not see a quorum for select board or school committee. I see 2 select board members, and I see 3 school committee members, counting one in the room. Two in the room. Oh, never mind. We do have, in that case, we do have a quorum.
No, you don't, because I'm here twice. Doesn't count.
Oh, he's
There and here.
in the room and he's on Zoom, so you can't count him twice.
You're making this hard.
So there's one physical person in every room, and now it's
I was told to be no
Tell me how
match.
your phone is on.
This is fine.
There's 3 of us.
There will be, it is going to come fast. All right, so calling the finance committee to order, doing this with a roll call vote because we are hybrid. Starting folks I see on Zoom, Joe McDonough.
Here.
Mark Zarro.
Here.
Jackie Quorum.
Here.
Ed Ross.
Here.
John Sullivan.
Here.
Emily Sissom.
Here.
And Joe Carnahan here. All right, so thank you, Ed, for the reminder. You're right, I should do that. Well,
I was the board member.
thank you, Jeffrey and Ed. We're a good team. All right. So I think we might actually forego the presentation on the CPA because, as it happens, due to some combination of family emergencies, other committees at the same time, we actually don't have a lot of representation from the CPA study committee. So I'll give people an opportunity to talk about it if they want to, but I think we might skip the presentation part. Then we get back to the operating budget, talking specifically, we'll have a bit of discussion about the school outlook and the impact of any federal funding changes. Then the committee itself will have a chance to discuss budget guidance and free cash usage next fiscal year. And then we will have our our regular business that we have every meeting, opportunities for liaison reports, and discussion of future agendas, and approving the minutes. So with that, let's move on to public comment. Oh, yeah, you're right. Thank you for. I am correctly, once again, Jeffrey has correctly interrupted me. I'd like to give the select board a chance to call to order. Chris, I see you on Zoom. You want to do the honors?
Thanks, Joe. Yes, I'll call the select board meeting to order. And since I'm remote and 2 are in the room, I'll take a roll call. Karen Rose Gillis.
Yep.
Karen Gately Herrick.
Yes.
And Chris Haley here. Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Chris. All right, so I do see one hand up on Zoom for comments. Angela, go ahead. Yep, she's.
Oh, okay.
We're good.
Hi.
That's okay.
Angela Binden, town meeting member, Orchard Park Drive. I can't talk. So my husband is going to read my statement. So this is public comment for 2 people. I take responsibility for what is written. I'm not putting that on him, but he will be reading it. And so If it goes a little long, it's for both of us. That's okay. Thank you. And he's Jeffrey Deeds, town meeting member.
Hello, everybody. I am extremely concerned about a proposed agreement presented to the select board last night by the town manager and assistant town manager. I hope the FinCom asks them to reconsider this proposal and to renegotiate with the Burbank Ice Arena. The town manager is working on a deal that would trade parking for control of Burbank funds, and that is just wrong. Burbank wants 50% of the revenue they already give us to be designated to a program of their choosing, Unified Sports. This is highly inappropriate. First, this is really not about Unified Sports, it is about process. I support Unified Sports and have been told that this mechanism of funding, designating Burbank funds, is inappropriate, the wrong way to do it. The better way to fund the Unified Sports program on an ongoing basis is by making it a community priority and funding it through accommodated costs. Town CFO Sharon Angstrom and Town Council Ivrea Freed have spent a long time working on sorting out the Burbank rent funds and have put into place a mechanism so that all future Burbank rent funds will go into free cash for FinCom and town meeting to distribute. That is important, especially with an override on the horizon. Burbank is not giving the town anything it isn't already entitled to. It is just trying to pressure the town to spend 50% of the money in a way they choose, which is wrong. And they are holding pickleball parking hostage, parking spaces that they already promised to the town. These tactics should not be applauded. Second, town meeting was told last May that the parking was not a problem and that Burbank will allow the town to use the back lot, which the town owns, for pickleball parking. I attended the August 26th Select Board meeting held at the Burbank Ice Arena and walked around the area, and Jane Wellman told the Select Board that she was working on a shared parking agreement. She stated that Burbank only asked for use of the retail lot for overflow, as they wouldn't be able to use St. Athanasius lot anymore due to Killam construction, and that they wanted to be released from liability. Select Board member Karen Herrick asked about opening up the lease to other items for negotiation, but Ms. Wellman said no, that she wanted to keep it very simple. It's just about shared parking, she said. Last week, Select Board designated Burbank Board Carl McFadden made his announcement to the school committee about terms of the agreement before the Select Board had even seen any contract agreement. The Select Board did not have any input into the terms of the negotiation. It now includes this trade of parking spaces for allowing Burbank to decide how the town spends its money that is already owed and paid to the town. Again, this is not about Unified Sports. There's a better way to fund the program, and that should be explored by the town and presented to town meeting in April. Nothing has even been presented to the town about the cost of the program. No data has been provided. This is an end run around process. A fellow town meeting member sent me an email that says, quote, "It puts anyone who feels differently in a bad spot because it looks like the naysayers are opposed to Unified Sports. At least that's how many people see it." That's not the point, of course. It's about the process. Unified Sports sounds like a wonderful program, but this is a money grab, pure and simple, with little quid pro quo or extortion thrown in for good measure, end quote. Burbank should be held to the verbal agreement they made when pickleball courts were voted on at town meeting. Burbank should be held to what was stated at the Select Board tour at the arena given by Carl McFadden a little over a month ago. Burbank funds should go to free cash as recommended by Town Council and the Town CFO, and a warrant article with details of the program and anticipated costs and funding suggested by Sharon Angstrom or the FinCom should be explored and sent to town meeting this April. This agreement should, I urge FinCom to put a stop to this agreement. Please let the Select Board know you can support pickleball parking and adaptive sports, but can still see this as the bad deal it is. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Jennifer.
you.
Other public comments? It is, actually, I have to call another committee to order because I see we're about to admit Margaret in the waiting room, which I believe means you're now in quorum for the CBA site committee. see Margaret, I see Sean, oh, and I do see Sandy. All right, so let's, I'm going to call the CPA study committee to order. Sandy Pathia,
Yes, here.
Margaret Conley Moran,
Here.
and this place the thing is reordered. It's ridiculous. Someone leave?
Sandy?
No, we have Sandy, we have Margaret, we have me.
Is it John back?
No, he's not on the committee. All right, never mind, I'm not calling the committee to order because I don't see another person in the list. If someone on Zoom looking at the lists can correct me, please do, but otherwise,
You know, if I could real quick, while it's kind of low in the room, like everybody online is like super loud, but inside the room it's very quiet when you're
Okay.
speaking.
so I understand, oh, wow. Boy, it makes all the difference whether I rotate towards the microphone or towards
You're
the
all good
computer.
now, thank you.
Chris, thank you for calling that out. All right, all you missed when I was not audible was me not calling the CPA committee to order because on the 20 people on Zoom, I can't actually find everyone I thought I could. So, all right, let's move along. Next order of business, if there's no more public comment, is the Finance Committee Reserve Fund transfer request. So who would like to speak to that?
I can speak to it.
Okay, use the mic.
Doesn't matter, does it?
Nope.
Can everybody hear me? Okay. The FinCom transfer is for $50,000. It is for radio amplification work at the high school. The chief of the police and the chief of the fire came to me requesting this because they had identified that there were spots within the building that their radios don't work, and that's problematic. So it will cost $50,000 to do this work so that, to ensure that they have a signal throughout the building. Both chiefs are, and there was a memo also attached that explains the situation in more detail. If you need it, they can answer questions.
If there's no further presentation, does anyone on the committee have any questions? John, go ahead.
So I have no idea how emergency radios work, but it's the idea that like hallways and around corners and stuff, that's blocking the signal, is that why?
I could probably get some microphone.
Yes, please, sorry, it's a long way from the back of the room, but please do come to the podium because otherwise the folks on Zoom will not hear you.
Okay, I don't want that.
I'll let him talk.
Yeah, I think this is got a green light. I think it's on. Rick Nelson, Fire Chief. So what happens with radio signals is a mixture of whether it's the concrete, the metal. If there is glazing on windows, particularly metal glazing, will stop the penetration of radio signals into the building. And we recently discovered, well, the spring, independently of each other, we found we had problems just kind of coincidentally at the same time. And we've done, the thorough research. We checked our radio equipment to make sure our radio was functioning properly. The radio vendors confirmed that. So the issue is that just the radio signal doesn't get in or out of the school. Or I should say out of the school. It gets in.
Okay. And then, is there a chance that this could be a similar issue with other schools or other town buildings?
There's always a chance. And what can happen is actually in the building code, buildings are required every 5 years to have a survey done, because as other buildings get built around, they can block the signal. So as things change, situations can change. So one building that passes now may not pass. We don't know what the cause of this was now. We don't actually know exactly how long it was going on. Unfortunately, the fire department isn't in there all the time. That's good. And with a single resource officer in the building, they may not even know they're missing radio transmissions because they have no point of reference. Basically what happened here is there was a second resource officer in a different part of the building that heard it, and the other one had no transmission. So.
Thank you. Mary Ann?
So this is just not a question for the fire chief, it's more for Sharon. I know we approve things, transfers out of the reserves at the end of June, and that those, I guess, get automatically replenished on July 1st. I just wanted to be sure, because,
That's correct.
I know
So
you
there's
got it.
200,000, yeah.
okay, thanks.
Oh, yes, thank you. Jill McDonough online.
Just quickly, I definitely agree with the urgency. My question is more on like the cost. Is the exact amount locked in now with the electrician and the radio vendor? Like we know exactly what that is? Like there's no chance this will be more, is there?
So right now, we know the price of the BDA, so it's called a BDA, a bidirectional amplifier from the radio vendor. That cost is just over $32,000. We are waiting for an estimate from the electrician because we had to get them architectural drawings. There's still some coordinating. So we were asking the $50,000 because we felt like, talking with facilities that $18,000 was a safe number, that we should come in well under that.
Okay. And obviously, if you didn't come in under, the delta would just go back into reserve, I guess, right?
Yeah, we're only going to use whatever it costs to fund the project, and then the rest could be transferred back out if need be.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions about this? Oh, yes, Jeffrey.
I'm just curious, if either the fire or police department upgrade their radio systems to a different technology, will this amplifier still work with the new system? Is there any chance you're going to upgrade the radios in the next couple of years?
No, because the way the bidirectional amplifier works is it works based off of the frequency that we use. So even if we were to change radio equipment, we'd still be transmitting over the same frequency. So a change in radio equipment would not affect the bidirectional amplifier.
Any other questions? In that case, I'll entertain a motion to approve the request for a fiscal year 26 reserve fund transfer of $50,000 from the Finance Committee Reserve Fund as presented.
So moved. Second.
Very well, okay, let's go with Ed with the motion and Ellen with the second. Thank you both. Any discussion before we vote? No? All right, voting will be a roll call. Joe McDonough?
Yes.
Mark Zarro?
Yes.
Jeffrey Corum?
Yes.
Ed Ross?
Yes.
Marion Downing?
Yes.
John Sullivan?
Yes.
Emily Sisson?
Yes.
And Joe Carnahan, yes. Thank you. All right, let's move on to the next item then. Thank you, Pete Piskin.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please keep everybody safe in high school.
9 minutes, James.
Oh, right.
How much are all the scores, Emily?
All right, so now I think I'm going to head over to Sharon for the next item, the presentation on free cash projections, financial forecasting, and long-term financial obligations. Sharon, take it away.
Thank you. So on the screen here, we have the financial forecast, and I showed it a little differently than what we typically show. We've been using a lot of free cash, more than all of us are comfortable with, honestly. And we tend to regenerate pretty safely $3 million. So what I showed was if we were to put $3 million in, go down from $6 million, what it would do to our budget. And we have made several changes to try and save money. One of the changes was to take the debt capital that we currently do at 5% of budget down to 4.75, saving about $330,000 of free cash. We also are proposing a use of, actually moving 5 employees that are stormwater employees that back 19 years ago when we actually established the stormwater fund, we said we'd leave them in the general fund at that time, but it's been 19 years and they're still paid out of the general fund. It's $180,000 that can be moved to stormwater. So really, stormwater is not self-sufficient. It's been subsidized by the general fund for all this time. So if we were to make that transfer, it would save another $180,000 from the general fund and from free cash. The downside is it would mean that we have to cover that additional $180,000 in the stormwater fund when we do water sewer increases. We'd have to either decide to use more free cash or certified surplus for the stormwater, increase the rate by $20 a year for residents, or some combination of both. But it would save the general fund $180,600. The other thing that we were trying to do when we were looking at this budget is try and aim for more like a 2.75% operating budget. And when we were talking to the school department, it was going to be tight. That was going to be hard for them. And so we started working on what could we do. And so one of the areas, let me put this at 3% just so you can see what the numbers would look like. So one of the numbers that we had when we started our budget in the accommodated cost area was the out-of-district special ed, which these are the line items that make it up. And this sped contingency is kind of named kind of strangely, but it's more like sped pending. There are people that aren't on contract to go out of district that could potentially go out of district. And we saw a huge increase last year, and this number was equally as large. It was about $1.2 million. And it was really driving up the free cash. So I proposed to the school department, can we leverage the money that we put into the special ed stabilization fund and cut this number in half? We have about $630,000 in there. Would you guys be willing to do that? And they were willing. The $625,000 came off the top here. I took it out. And I said to help with their operating budget, because it seemed like they were going to be tighter than the town side, I felt like a 2.75% budget was easily doable by the town side. But the school side has more employees, a little harder number for them to be sure that they could do. So I said, well, if we went to a 3% budget and the additional $75,000 that the town would have gotten from a 2.75 to a 3, we transferred that over to the school, would that help? And he felt that that would be very helpful. So when I look at the numbers, when those things are put into it, and let's go back up so you can see, I don't need to make everybody dizzy, but. So let's see. So here you can see us adjusting. In this number here is the subtraction of $180,600,000, which is reducing our free cash use overall, reducing by $75,000 for the town side. There is an addition there of something that's being added at November town meeting, that is rodent mitigation. It was paid for by, was it ARPA? And it needs to be added to our budget to be able to sustain it long term. So those are the adjustments there. So you can see that a 3% operating budget would only give the town a 2.31% budget, but that's something that we can manage, especially moving those 5 employees out of the town side. The school has the adjustments here of the, did I not put the adjustment operating? Oh, this is me adding the $75,000. So this is the last year that it shows the $150,000 has to be shown there to show the money that we gave for full day K to be non-tuition. And so we added the $75,000. So there's adjustments here. So down here you can see that the overall budget for the school is only 2.27. Their operating budget, which is without the accommodated cost, which is out of district special ed, is 3.43. But they let their line item for accommodated costs go down by 7.33, so the net being 2.27. The town's operating budget would be more like a 2.31% increase, and the accommodated costs that are on the town side are up by 9.33%. So overall, the town is going up 3.56. But this is the breakdown of, and we try to make concessions on both sides to make this work in the best way possible to try and minimize the use of free cash. So I wanted to kind of show this so that you could see what where they're trying to save money and leveraging that stabilization fund. I mean, you know, we want to put more money in there, but this is a time when we really absolutely need to keep our free cash use down. And so thankfully the superintendent agreed and was willing to make this change. So we agreed upon if we could go for a 3% budget, that additional $75,000 would go to the school from the town side budget, and then they would reduce the out-of-district special ed estimates, knowing that they have this extra fund on the side that would cover the ones that actually come to fruition that are above what we put in the contingency line or pending line. So that's all I have to show you here. I'm going to go into my presentation then. So this is just the agenda for this evening, the way I thought it was going to go, but things changed a little bit. I'm going to give you a revenue update, I'm going to give you a free cash update, and I'm going to review, last year we actually showed what other funds are out there. I'm going to give you updated balances on those, go over the accommodated cost, and then show what the operating budget for each level, what free cash would need to be for each level of operating budget. Then you'll have a school outlook, and discussion will happen after that about, you know, free cash usage. Even though it is at the end of my slide, I'm sure we'll hold off conversation until after we hear the schools, and then the liaison report, agenda items, and then group minutes. So this slide shows projected revenues from fiscal 25 to fiscal 27. You can see that fiscal 25 was up 3.28, which was a little bit on the low side because excluded debt had fallen off. Not all of it, there was still a loan payment left for the library. Fiscal 26, there was no excluded debt, and it looks very funky at 2.52, and that is because the excluded debt went away. Fiscal 27 looks rather large at 8.6 because it will be the first tranche of the excluded debt coming in there for Killam and Recal. So free cash obviously to be determined. You can see the numbers. We came up with a 4% in fiscal 25 overall and 3.8 in fiscal 26. So this is the breakout, and the property taxes are up 8.6%, and you can see that the baseline is going at 3.4. New growth is up just 0.6. It's kind of really stable right now, not really making much growth right now. Excluded debt is where that increase is coming from, because we go from 0 to going to 4.73 million in debt payments in fiscal 27, and then the abatements goes up 2.5%. Other local revenues are up 7.4%, and that is because I really leveraged our investment income, because most of our free cash regeneration is from investment income. And we never like to rely on it. We knew that interest rates would start to fall, and so we've kind of always been conservative about the way we projected. I think I have it at $3 million in the forecast, and we collected about $4 million for the last couple of years. But we've been locking down funds to get that kind of return. But I do feel like it still gives me some room for rates to fall and still fall within the budget. So we increased it dramatically, and that's what's driving that 7.4%. State aid, as we always do, 2.5%, too early to say, and per agreement with FinCom, we tend to go with 2.5%, and if there's a shortfall, we do it later. And this year, actually, fiscal 26, we thought about 200,000 more than we had projected, and we'll see that in November town meeting. And then other is just 2.1. That's where we have our earnings distribution from our own RLD, and then also indirect costs that are charged to the enterprise funds. Those are where the increases are there. These are our reserves. I'm estimating free cash will come in around $17.3 million. We do have over $2 million in general fund stabilization, and obviously our FinCom reserves, giving us about $19.57 million of reserves, which represents 14.8% of our projected revenue for fiscal 27. But I will add that in the past, it was just needed double digits to ensure your AAA bond rating. I've heard that 15%, somewhere that 12 to 15% is the sweet spot, although nobody ever quotes. So we're really in a close number even at this point at 14.8, but I think we have strong enough numbers that I think that they will leave us as a AAA as we could issue for Kell and retail. This is the sources of regeneration. We had $2.77 million over projection. As I said before, investment income is the biggest driver there because we try to be conservative, knowing that interest rates will be falling, projected to fall. And so we wanted to not be relying on them so that we weren't in a bad spot. So $1.89 million is coming from investment income, property taxes, $144,000, motor vehicle excise, $190,000, and fees, $90,000. Then we have delinquent taxes, miscellaneous, and local assistance coming in for $236,000, $80,000, and $140,000. I will note that the items in green I know to be fairly sustainable, but with the investment income and the other starter items, they could come in, they could not come in. It's variable, and so we can't rely that those numbers will be there in the next year. This is the expenses that came in under projection. So about $304,000 came from the accommodated cost arena. $6,000 was turned back from the school, although we will be getting some insurance money back from a claim that was paid out of the school department's budget, but it will be refunded in fiscal 26, so we'll directly go to free cash. I think it's an over $50,000 reimbursement from the insurance company. And then in the town side, about $702,000, the majority of which is coming from open positions. So within administrative services, public works, and public safety, vacancies turned back $335,000. All other departments, $48,000. We also turned back $98,000 in legal expenses and $129,000 for regional housing expenses. I think we are the host of the regional housing, and we went without somebody for a period of time, and that's why we turned back the money. There wasn't anybody working. I don't know if it was the whole year. When I asked Andrew, he said that the position was open for a period of time. So we had expenses that got turned back there, and $92,000 of just various small turnbacks. These are the funds that we talked about last time, and their intended use. Sale of real estate has $50,192, and it's used. We use it for purchasing land or capital purchases. We have the stabilization fund that was mentioned on the reserve slide, and that doesn't have any specific restrictions. It just requires a two-thirds vote at town meeting. The smart growth stabilization is for capital only has $11,464 left. And we spoke of the SPED stabilization fund that currently has $630,627. And the SPED stabilization fund as well will get interest while it sits there as well, as do all the other stabilization funds. So that's good to know. This is the accommodated cost. You can see they're up 15.8% over the prior year in fiscal 27 and 12.6% in fiscal 28. So they're not coming down for us at all. So benefits at 11.1, capital is down. As I said, that's driven by me opting to go with 4.75 instead of 5%, saving us the $336,550. Rubbish is a big area. Accommodated costs, it falls under miscellaneous, and it's coming in at 25.3% over the prior year. We had it budgeted at 20, so I had to increase it. And it could even go up more because the select board is talking about that contract has not been accepted yet, and there's some discussion about whether it's worth it to entertain weekly recycling, because the numbers that have us at 25.3 are bi-weekly recycling. So that still could be a change that we could see in the near future if, what the select board decides there. There was some discussion about knowing where we are with long-term liability, so I put it off to the side because it falls under benefits. So our pension is currently 79.8% funded, with a fully funded date of 2031, or calendar year 2031, which is our fiscal year 2032. And the unfunded liability is 51 million, just over 51 million $5.34 million. The OPEB is only 10.64% funded, and the liability is $80.69 million. There isn't a fully funded date in place right now for the general fund, because we're just paying what we can. We're not even fully funding our annual required. The enterprise funds, water, sewer, stormwater, and light, are targeted to have a fully funded data ground when we're fully funded for pension, but we haven't been able to allocate enough money to OPEB and the general fund to do that. So the plan is that when pension gets fully funded, we could take that savings from that and start to really fund OPEB in an appropriate way. And as we talked about before, sped down 7.3% based on the agreement we talked about. The vocational schools, we only have it up at 2.9%, but we don't know enough when we're building this budget to know how many students are going to be there, and you'll see it in November town meeting, I have to ask for more money for the Northeast Metro Vocational School because the budget went up over 10%, and our enrollment at that school has gone up from like 32 kids to 51 over the last couple of years. And so the way it's done every year is you get your prorated share of their operating budget and the debt for that building. And so the numbers are coming in higher than we had originally thought. But as the kids decide to go to that school and enrollment goes up, our piece of the pie goes up as well. So this is the benefits broken down. Benefits are up 11.1% in fiscal 27 and 7.9 in fiscal 28. So I'm on the retirement board. In the last couple of years, we have been seeing assessment increases for the pension at 8.33%. And every 2 years, we have evaluation to do a new funding schedule. And I told the board it was a lot. Our budget's been pummeled by increases in accommodated costs. Can we bring that number down and not push out the fully funded date? So we ended up pushing out the fully funded date by 1 year and bringing down the assessment to 5.8% each year, which is helpful. Maybe not helpful enough, but definitely helpful. 8.33 was really a big number. Then we have our OPEB, which we had to bring down in fiscal 26 to 200,000, and again we have to bring down in fiscal 27 to 300,000. That 40,000 has like a valuation in there, but because we had late numbers coming in about health insurance, we recently got news from Maya that we really should be projecting. I think I had an 8.5 or a 9 there. They told us expect a 13 at least, and so I had to increase the number I had originally and reduce the OPEB number to try and absorb that. So not great news there, but unemployment has been spiking. I'm not sure why, but we were up 62.5% based on actuals from the prior year, so I had to put that into fiscal 27. Health insurance, as I mentioned, I went with 14% just to give us a little buffer, hopefully. 2.5% for Medicare, and indemnification at 3.8. This is our capital and debt, which is up 71.6%, obviously because the excluded debt is being added in fiscal 27. So capital was where we took numbers down to get to the 4.75. We took that out as, that because the debt is already set stone. So that's where the number came from. That's what's driving that 26.1 going down. And our debt inside the levy is going at 41% because there are debts that are being added that year that aren't in fiscal 26. So we had pushed the issuance of debt for Killam, Recal, Pickleball, Birch Meadow, and the Fieldhouse floor to January of 2026. So that savings you'll see at November town meeting is going to be pushed over to capital to keep our 5% commitment. But it ends up being that those first debt payments for those projects that are inside the levy will show up here. And so that's a 41% increase, and obviously the excluded debt. So with the debt, I'm estimating we'll probably borrow the first tranche of maybe $45 million, and that's not etched in stone, but based on the cash flow, I assumed it would be about $45 million that we would borrow to keep us from needing to borrow for at least a year. And that would have an impact of $42.17 per 100,000. And also she went with a higher interest rate, so it could be lower than that. And then recal, I think they gave me a 4% estimate on these, where before they gave us a 3%. So if we stay with our AAA, these could be lower numbers. But to give you an idea, $18.02 for the recal project. I'm thinking we'll probably, based on the cash flows I'm seeing today, borrow about $16 million come January. The average home in Reading at $890,000 would see a $536 increase to their taxes related to the excluded debt coming on in fiscal 27. This is our free cash chart. It shows you over the last few years where free cash has been coming from. And so you can see that back in fiscal 21, we were at 17.73, and it's been consistently growing. And now we're down by $2 million about. And you can see the numbers are the 2.77 revenue over projection, expenses a little over 9 under projection. We used last year $7.34 million of free cash combined. And then we also have 1.57 coming back to us. So at the end of last year, I had projected a higher number for free cash. But what ended up happening was we had the Millette Stones project going on. It was not complete. And it was a federal grant that was not going to come in until the project was complete. So they held it for $1 million. Because whenever a grant is in deficit, it's as if you borrow the money from the general fund. So they hold it in case you don't get the money back from the grant. And so this year, my staff had to chase the $2 million because we did not have it. A week before September 30th, we were making pests of ourselves, so I didn't have to hold this money. It was over $2 million that I would have had to hold. And thankfully, we got all that money by making pests of ourselves, and because otherwise this number would have been over $2 million lower than you see here. So we did what we could to get that money, and you can see that 1.57 coming back to us. This slide was interesting. My assistant department head had been on DLS for another reason and came across this slide. This is free cash use. I got the pictures up here so I can see it. So there's the free cash use each year from 2017 to 2024, and it does the percentage of free cash that you used. And as much as we're uncomfortable with our 31.7% that we used in fiscal 24, they also show it as budget, percentage of budget. We're actually up here. So these are all the communities in Massachusetts. And 15 communities are using 0.5 to 19.99%. These are the 15 up here. And we're in this grouping here. 20 to 39% is this group. All these others are using 40 to 100% of their free cash. So this inflation problem is not a problem that's just hit us hard, it's hit everybody hard. You can see the progressive use from fiscal 2017 to 2024, how much more free cash is being used. It does seem like it's, peaked at 23 and started to come down, and maybe we'll see that being a trend. It would be nice. But I thought it was a very telling slide to look at because we feel terrible about the amount of free cash that we're using, and to see that there's 116 communities that are in this area, 80 to 99% is mind-boggling to me. The one thing I will say about that is different communities keep their reserves in different buckets. So it is possible that these percentages have to do with the fact that some have all kinds of stabilization funds and they're specifically looking at free cash. Because I couldn't believe that this many people would be using almost 100% of free cash. But it was a very interesting slide, so I felt I'd share it with you so that we can see that we're not alone in our struggles with the inflation that's hit our budget. This final slide shows what it would cost to have different operating budgets. So a 2.5 would be $6.35 million. A 2.75 is $6.55 million. 6.75 for a 3%, which is where it seems like it would be, the lowest number that I think the school could really do without having any significant cuts. And 6.9, 3.25, and 7.15 for 3.5. I don't see us being up here at all. I think it's one of these numbers here. but that's not up to me. So I figured I would give you that information, and then we can have a discussion later, but since it was on my PowerPoint slide, I figured I'd show it, and then we can come back to it. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Sharon. So questions from the committee about Sharon's presentation? I said, well, people looking at me hopefully. Who wants to go first? Go ahead, Jeffrey.
I just had a question. When you showed the savings for the housing reserve fund at 125,000 or so, and that surprised me that was that number versus the 5 employees from the stormwater that are 180,000. So are those part-time employees from the sewer, the stormwater?
The stormwater is, I believe, 5 employees, and I think
But
they're
it was only
full-time.
$180,000,
Yes,
right?
yes, they're more like labor type positions. But that 129 represents a regional housing person and the expenses related to that, and it's for, I think it's 5 communities, is that correct? And so we went without a person, so none of the communities were paying us, and we also weren't expending money. So we usually have a projection for the revenue coming in from the other communities, and then also the expenses. And so neither were really used fully in fiscal 2025.
So the net savings to the budget was not 125 because we didn't get the revenue from the other towns then?
Revenue and expenses get counted separately when you're doing the free cash calculation. So we were over projection for revenue without that money coming in, and then the expenses came in under budget because we didn't spend that money.
Thank you. And then on the capital, where you're going to reduce from the 5% target to 4.75, my recollection was in recent years we've been doing slightly more than the 5%, like 5.5. So are we doing 5.5 this year, or we had already stepped down from 5.5 to 5?
We had already.
And now we're going to step a little further down.
Yeah, we had already gone back to our 5%, which is our norm. But in these tight budget times, we tend to do things like, reduce that number a little bit to give us a little savings, and that's what I did. I probably could have taken it down more, but what was in capital for fiscal 27 wasn't a lot of things I felt I could move. And that's why I went with 4.75.
Mary Ann?
Sorry, thank you. Can you go over again, taking from the school sped reserves and how much that was? I mean, as a percentage of the whole account, because that's helping this year, but I wonder how sustainable that is, like how much we're putting in from the schools every year.
I can pull out that quote we were talking about there, if that's helpful.
Thank you. Was it something like 600,000 you were taking
We
out?
took about 625,000 because we have 630,000 sitting in that sped stabilization. So if all of the potential or pending students were to go out, they would need to use their sped stabilization, and then would wipe it out. So it definitely could present a problem. So you can see
I mean, it helps us this year, but I'm just thinking.
it could hurt us more next
This
year.
can't be a crack.
If all of it comes to fruition, it could hurt, because I have it at the same range for next year. We have to increase this by 600,000. If every one of the ones that he has pending has to go, and he uses up all of his sped stabilization funds, we wouldn't have much of anything left to use. So this could impact us next year, absolutely.
So, I mean, if they like underspend regular day and do those kinds of transfers like we've seen in the past, they'll be able to put more money in. But then I see this later topic on the agenda, a concern with, federal cuts to the school budget too, and that it's going to be a tight balancing act. Thank you.
Tom, would you comment on that?
Tom wants to make a comment.
This is the he that Sharon's referring to, it's just if he needs it.
Thank you, Marion. I think that's a great question. And I just first want to thank the town and Sharon and Matt, who I think have been really collaborative in this process. And we've gone back and forth many a times.
And I think as a school district, we've tried to say, how can we do our part to try to push off the override as long as we can? And I think you see, kind of the numbers up here. It's a 2.27% increase for us, as from our bottom line budget from FY26 to FY27, which we know there's real challenges with that. If we were to, for us on the school side, say that we were going to have a level service budget versus what we're getting sort of for this proposal, we're off by close to around 800,000. With that said, we know there's some creative things that we can do in terms of bringing revenue in, which we've talked about, I can talk about tonight, and to decrease cost. So we feel like we've pushed as far as we can, and I also feel as confident as we can at this point that this isn't setting us up for a long-term failure. We feel like when we've gone through that list and had that reduction of 600,000, we have a plan in place for that to be able to be sustainable. And I think as Sharon shared, we know that we do have the backstop of the Special Ed Reserve Fund, but our plan right now is to not assume we have to dive into that. I mean, that's there if we need it, but I would say this plan does not necessitate us using that 600,000. Our hope is that that money stays where it is, but we just have to be realistic that we're obviously working on thinner margins and that there's a stronger likelihood that we'll need it this year than we have in the past. But I think from the school side, we feel like we are really pushing as far as we can, but we also feel like we can sort of work with what's up here, and I think we've gone back and forth the town very collaboratively on that thus far.
Thank you. Karen?
Question?
Please come. No one on Zoom is going to hear you unless you come up to the podium, I'm afraid.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a general question. So thank you. Just a general question. Karen Herrick, Select Board. So the legislator has allocated significant monies from the surtax fund to school budgets, which I understand comes directly to the town. Are we going to talk about that tonight? I'd like to see where that is in the process and understand the timing and what real impact it's going to have on Reading. Thanks.
I can show you where it is in our budget.
Go ahead, Sharon.
So right here, you can see that I'm adding in, we have an additional 199,890, and that will be utilized in November town meeting to fund some of the changes that we need to make. And so it's included in this 2.5%. I think the baseline is now gone up by 200,000, which impacts what our 2.5% increase would be. As we become aware of what state actually is, and if we get lucky enough to get extra money next year, that only helps to do more with the budget, and as we know that, we'll do something with it.
Just two other quick thoughts on that too. So we, as you may know, that the minimum aid funding for districts went up this past year, which resulted in about a couple between $200,000 and $300,000 extra from towards the schools technically, but I think went back into the general fund. So I don't think how we've worked through this is that means that's assumed that all that money is going to come back to the schools.
Because as a resident, I'm assuming that is school funding. The law says it's school funding. So that's what I wanted to see if we were going to talk about it today.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, that's a conversation we can have. I think
Some of it's facilities to support.
Correct. And again, if that money's technically what comes to us in another way, I do want to be very open and transparent that I think the town has been very, very supportive of the schools over the years, and I think invests in the schools. So open to whatever sort of works on that, but I appreciate you raising that. We would love more funds, but also recognize that we're working in partnership with the town, and the town has been very good financial support. I will add one other thing that we are already starting to see the benefit is from the fair share tax. We are in the process now of, looks like we'll be getting a little over $100,000 for FY26. For us to be able to use for facility and capital needs within the schools as well. And that looks like our rough sort of back of the napkin thoughts now is to use that towards some of our technology needs, which normally we have to pull out of end of year savings. So it actually would position us better to absorb some of what we're talking about tonight too. So that's something that looks like we'll be getting some immediate relief and support as well.
And that goes directly to the school?
Correct, with the earmark.
Certainly, I was going to repeat for folks into the questions about whether this money from the fair share amount, if it was earmarked to go to schools, he's going to schools, and Tom was explaining how that works in partnership with town. Sharon, go ahead.
So at November town meeting, I need to request another $240,000 for our regional schools, and so that's where the $200,000 is being utilized this year. If we were to get extra money in, additional money in fiscal '27, we can talk about where we put that. But we knew that we were short at the regional school because of our enrollments.
Next I see Joe McDonough on Zoom. Go ahead. Sorry, Joe, there's a hand in the room. Is this still on the same question? Okay, Joe, I'll ask you wait for a second since this is still on the same topic.
Just one minor addition to what was just said. Some people may know, Karen, you probably actually do know this, that most of the fair share tax has actually gone more towards school lunches than anything else. So that results in itself going into the revolving account for the school lunch account and results in our students having free lunch, right? So it's not been unencumbered or just freely given. In most cases, it's been given as part of school lunch, the biggest portion of the share so far.
There's also funds that come in that have to be earmarked to a separate fund. So school lunch is one of them, and school choice, when they get funding for school choice, that goes into a separate fund that only the school department can use.
That's not fair share.
Thank you for your patience, Joe. Go ahead.
Thanks, Sharon, for your creativity. On the pension funding, there's no reason we couldn't go out another year. You mentioned that we already went out 1 year, that, if we're looking for some savings, granted, the full funding would be pushed off, but my understanding is this, for better or worse, there's a lot of communities in Massachusetts that are not fully funded. We're still positioned pretty well there, relatively.
Yeah, but the decision isn't mine, so I was encouraging for other members of the board what to do. They want to see it fully funded sooner, and we have to accept what they approve. So I was able to get them down to 5 and push it out 1 more year, because the prior evaluation, we pushed it out a year as well. So it feels like a moving target to them that they're never going to get us fully funded. So it's not just up to me when it comes to the retirement board, it's up to the 5-member board.
Okay, but it's really a board decision. It's not a mandatory legal requirement for us to be fully funded, right? So
it has to be funded by 2040, mandatory.
Yeah.
But we were at 2029 for a lot of years, and then had to push up to 2030. Now we're at 2032. So they're doing what they can for us, but they want us to get this funded, and they get to decide as a board what the funding schedule looks like.
Okay, and then you mentioned on the capital reductions, are there specific items that came out or deferred? To bring it from the 5 to 475?
One item that stands out in my mind that I had to move out was the facilities master plan. I moved, that was a $200,000, and I believe I moved it out a year. Off the top of my head, I'd have to go back and look at it to give you others, but I think that we have a fire truck in fiscal '27, which takes up a lot of the capital money, plus I had to increase the cost of that truck. So, when you have a truck, it takes up a lot, and we always have to do a certain amount of paving, sidewalk work. So there's certain things that I have to leave there. And whenever we have a fire truck on a year, we do a lot less capital. So there was a lot less for me to move around. And one of the things that stood out was the master plan for the facilities department.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yes, Ed, go ahead.
First, just to echo what Joe was just saying, thanks again, Sharon, for your creativity and financial discipline. I think these are the types of things we've asked in the past, and you always deliver, so I really appreciate that. I have a couple of just kind of quick ones I think that you can answer very quickly. On Killam and recount those numbers that you have there, is that going to be just one bond? I know you kind of have to look at all my different numbers, but it's just one.
So when we issue the debt, we do one issuance, but they break out the debt payments by the project. So whatever I borrow for Killam will be broken out for Killam, and so it will have 2 different debt payments. And so it's kind of like one issuance. We're issuing bonds once, but they keep track of the debt separately.
So yeah, so if we get an interest rate, it's not like Killam gets one interest rate and Recalc gets another one.
No, they'll be the same interest rate.
Gotcha. Okay, that's what I thought.
Well, Well, they could be slightly different because we chose to do 15 years for recal and 20 years for kiln. So based on the term that we selected, it could be slightly different, but whatever AAA would qualify for would be what we get.
And then another kind of question that I had is similar to what Joe was asking before. When you project out, kind of going forward around the 4.75%, is that what you started to look at, kind of in your future projections, or are you creeping down from 4.75 to 4.5, or what were you looking at, or has this just been a kind of a one-year analysis?
So I'm sorry that I did not put the capital and debt plan in your packet, but I plan to put it next week. So what I had done was assumed the 5% would resume in the next year, but obviously it's going to be a tight budget, depending on what we do and when we decide to do the override. I didn't make changes to the future years, except for maybe the fact that a fire truck I have on there for future years, I have as a borrowing, so that we could get more, like borrow for 2 or 3 years, so I could pull more of the trucks that are being pushed out. Like a lot of the DPW trucks are so expensive and they're being pushed outward. I'm trying to pull them inward. So I do recall in the future years pulling a truck and calling it debt. And we haven't borrowed for a truck the entire time I've been here, but these are desperate times. So I just need to make this capital plan work a lot better, because a truck that has a 15-year life, I'm lucky if I get it replaced by 18 to 20 years. A 10-year asset, I'm lucky if I get it by 15. We're really, inflation has hurt the budget so much that it's pushing so many things outward, and I want to pull them back inward, because we're going to start having problems with things breaking down if we don't invest in our capital. So it's a balancing act we're trying to do here, and in some ways I feel like how do these companies get away with charging us what they're charging us? When you look at what a fire truck cost us even 5 years ago compared to now, it's crazy. So yeah, just balancing what we saw for increases after the pandemic. Supply chain issues, and it takes them 4 years to get us a fire truck now, so we can't push them off, we have to order them. And so it's just crazy. Trucks, all the DPW trucks, I want to say they went up double-digit percentages, all of them. And it's just, our revenues don't grow like that, so we can't absorb those types of increases. It's really hard.
Sharon, I think I remember the answer to this one, but how much does a fire truck cost?
I think it's $1.4 million. But there were a few years back, we were paying $600,000 or $700,000 for it, so it's almost doubled in the cost. It's quite crazy, and so now I think that the range, now over $1 million, I have to entertain borrowing it to make the capital plan work better, so that I can have, if it's, let's say, 1.5 for the next truck, I'm paying the $500,000 plus interest over 3 years, but I have more ability to do other things in the capital plan, and I'm not tying down the whole 1.5 in 1 year. Those are the only real changes I made that are significant, but I can go over the capital plan in detail, because I think it's important that we all know kind of what changes I made and what I had to push out. Because I know that the select board and the FinCom would like to be more involved, so we can certainly have a more detailed discussion about that, go line by line of the changes that I made this round. So from the last time we saw the capital plan in April, what are the changes I made? Because I will highlight them for you. And you can see it's a balancing act that's very hard when numbers keep going up. You sit down with a department head and they say, I need you to increase the price by 20,000 $. It's a very hard balance. I feel like I rebalance it multiple times after meeting with each department head.
Ed, did you have, I see Karen, did you have something on that as well?
On that specific one?
Yes. Okay, Karen, if you had a question about this, go ahead.
Great. Thank you. Karen Herrick, Select Board. Couple of questions. So we're talking about capital. So have we gotten our first Green Communities grant yet? How can we incorporate that into our capital plan in the next 12 months? Have we looked at whether there might be things that we can support the capital plan for the next 12 months? Because we're just going to get that, and we don't have to apply for it. And then One thing that the select board discussed last year was the funding, the budget for the permanent building committee, which was $50,000. And so this is more of a money shell. No, that's the wrong analogy. They're not spending it, and we, town meeting had approved that $200,000 master plan, and they are a very busy committee right now managing projects. So could that be aware, or you've cut that budget significantly, at least freeze up in the budget money?
It definitely is an area I could take out. I did not take out because the last couple of years they used it for design work for the retail that has passed that period from when the debt exclusion passed and when I actually am going to borrow. So the last couple of years they used it towards design.
Okay, I think the select board was under the impression that they weren't under.
It's usually
okay.
But
Okay.
the last couple of years when we had retail, and we knew that we were going to try and push out the borrowing, it was used for that.
So I would love for the finance committee to seriously consider dramatically reducing that budget, and we can do it year by year because they're busy and they're funded. Thank you.
I do remember the conversation about the $50,000 line for the permanent building committee. Yeah, I can see how it could be different, before projects versus in.
It's definitely something that if something came up and the permanent building committee needed money, we could come to FinCom for. So certainly could take it up.
So just to kind of close off that on the capital, I don't want to speak for the chair, but I think that having that type of a discussion on capital would be excellent. That would keep us pretty well informed as far as things. Next question I had, and it may not just be for you, Sharon, but is there anything that you've identified, you kind of going forward, similar to rubbish, where we know that we're coming up to a cliff? I know we had, some energy stuff in the past. We had rubbish, coming up now. Is there anything else that we know that a contract is coming up that could be, kind of sizable?
Garbage was the big thing that was coming up. And we knew we were going to get hit hard with it because we had that advantageous 10-year contract that was well below market. So we're getting hit hard because we had such a good contract the last 10 years. I don't know of anything else, but I don't know that all the costs are stabilizing. Some things have. I did notice that property and casualty actually, stabilized this year or came in lower than projection. Who knows what next year will yield, because when it comes to insurance, it really has to do with claims and things like that. So, but I'm not satisfied that the costs are stabilized across the board. So as we learn things, we make those adjustments in the financial forecast. But there's no contract that's coming due like the rubbish one that we know that something's coming. We just are being a little bit reactive in some ways because, as we learn about something, I had 8.5 say for benefits or 9, and then met with our representative said, I think that you need to budget of 13% at least. So to have back-to-back years at double-digit percentages, that's not typical. So as we get information, we incorporate that into the forecast. Obviously, we're going to do everything we can to avoid a double-digit increase. We're looking at plan design with the PEC. We're trying to do everything we can. Obviously, that's a decision that has to be made within that committee, but we are working on it. We're looking at plan design. We're looking at everything that we can do to make that a lower number. But not knowing what that committee would decide, I have to go with worst case scenario, and I'm going with 14%.
I don't want to bury the lead. It's a relief that you don't have anything else that's out there. So that's and again, appreciate you kicking over and rock to since I had rubbish, and this may get you off the hot seat for a second, Sharon, but this may be more of a question for Matt. And I guess kind of a couple things that that kind of Sharon mentioned in her presentation. So I guess I have these 3 questions that I wrote. I don't know, and they're not really probably the best order. But is there any? Do we have any issues in front of us with this delay in not signing that contract?
Probably won't take very much for a second. Right now, I don't know if you watched the select board meeting last night, so we are really down to 2 vendors right now, Waste Management and our current vendor, Republic. Republic indicated they were gonna give us some additional information regarding the recycling for weekly instead of bi-weekly. So we should have that soon. The select board seemed to say that they want to call even a special select board meeting to deal with it. One of the issues is Waste Management told us that if we wait too long, because they have to order trucks for us to come in, and if they can't get those trucks in time, there could be something like a $30,000 rental fee on those trucks. So that's really the only cause for concern. But I think we're acting in enough time. They assured us last night that if we acted fairly promptly, that would not be the case. So we're hoping to wrap up that contract soon. I would have hoped to wrap it up last night, but Republic sort of came in with a last-minute offer, and it wasn't enough time really for the select board to digest it. They had further questions, which I can understand. We did have quite a long competitive process, and for some reason, Republic, even though we asked them for things they didn't provide, and then they came in late with an offer that was a little better, at least financially, than Waste Management. So we have to look at it. Obviously, it's a big part of the budget. We're looking at probably a 25% increase. The former contract that we had, our current contract till the end of the fiscal year, was very advantageous, 10-year contract. They don't have those type of contracts anymore. That was almost a relic from the time we entered into it. We were very fortunate at the time with the vendor to have that contract. So we should have some more news on that fairly soon.
And just so that I'm clear on one of the other points is the weekly for rubbish, once every 2 weeks for recycling. Mm-hmm. Is that the piece that Republic came back on to make it weekly, and then looking at it from the costs associated with that, it's not as, and I guess my question is on that, Matt, just to take it one step further. In either situation, whether the existing one or the next one, is that still making the number, even though it's, kind of, it might be, better economics, it's still going to be higher than what we have on the table right now?
On the table right now, meaning our current contract that is.
No, yeah, no, I know that.
Okay.
I know
Yeah, so what Republic did, Waste Management, they were the top scorer on the technical assessment we did and financially, not by a lot, they were a little bit below. There's an issue regarding bulk items and, charging for bulk items. I think what happened was that we spoke about it at the select board meeting a couple of weeks ago, and I think Republic saw that meeting and saw what Waste Management's numbers were and said, hey, we think we can beat that. So not just on the bi-weekly, weekly recycling, on the actual trash contract itself, they put in a late proposal. We just got it over the weekend. Chris Cole crunched the numbers on Sunday, and we had some information on Monday, and then in time for the select board on Tuesday. That was actually a little less expensive overall than what Waste Management had proposed. So, but it's not, it doesn't always come down to money, believe it or not. There's been some service issues with Republic that I think everybody's well aware of, going back to what we call Trashgate when Fidel was here. So we don't want to repeat that. They have gotten better since then. So we're looking at everything, but they came back a little cheaper on that. And then last night when the select board started talking about, hey, can we do weekly recycling? People are used to it. We want to offer that. Then Republic said, well, we can get you a proposal for that too. We had asked them for that before, but the select board asked them last night and they said they would do it. And so that's what we're waiting for. So it'll be a more rounded package when we get it, hopefully even by the end of the week. So it could be overall a little bit cheaper than what we were expecting. We budgeted in the waste management numbers, right, Sharon? Will you got them?
So the numbers in the budget are the waste management proposal for bi-weekly recycling included in that. If they were to go with a weekly recycling, I think there's almost $400,000 more, and that is not incorporated into this budget. I don't know what Republic will come with for the weekly. So netting the savings from the Republic the Republic contract, which is like $125,000 maybe, and whatever they charge, that increase will not be incorporated right now into this budget, so we would have to consider that based on whatever the select board decides to do.
Thank you. I mean, I think that's, given all of the other kind of tougher decisions that we're making, I think we just need to make sure that we're, kind of keeping a close eye on, what you're projecting, and then what, if the number's going to come in higher, what that impact's going to be. Last question I had on rubbish, Matt. Is there, in either of these types of proposals, is there any option to change something midterm? Like, so, say we wanted to, lock this thing down, and we're going to go weekly and bi-weekly for recycling. Do any of these offer any kind of flexibility if we wanted to change it, kind of mid-contract, or is that, or once you're locked in, you're locked in?
We haven't even worked out the final language of the agreement. Some of that gets into the legal arena. I mean, I suppose everything's negotiated, and if the town and either Waste Management or Republic would agree to change things, we could agree to do that. I don't know if there's any automatic language that would allow us to do that, though.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks. And so, back to you, Sharon. Just one last thing. Kind of given all of this, I don't know if this is something that we have on in another agenda item or for another meeting, but where does this leave us as far as when we want to talk about it? What are you now projecting where we start to hit that line, given this path of starting to make some cuts, as far as, how sustainable is that? How long can we do that? And then, is there starting to kind of, some dates starting to crystallize as far as when we need to, start to prepare for an override?
So part of my concern here isn't our overall reserve, but the percentage of our reserves. I feel like I'm hearing so much that bond rating agencies prefer your numbers to be somewhere near 15%, and we're right there right now at 14.8. I'm worried that if we go another year without an override, we jeopardize the next tranche of borrowing maybe being downgraded because we're not holding enough reserves. So that would be my concern. I think that if that wasn't a concern, we probably would have 1 or 2 years. But that being a concern, knowing that we're borrowing for these more money than we've ever borrowed for these projects, I would like to keep that AAA bond rating intact. And so it would be my preference to do an override next year, but it's not my call.
And so, Sharon, is there a way, getting back to that, because if the bond rating is, kind of, in the forefront of your mind, is there any analysis that's done out there where, what's triggered someone, in another community, within the state that's gone from AAA down, like, is there anything that's in there that you can, so that, you're a worrier by nature. So what I want to understand is it justified, or is it, have you seen something even through the bond council or whatever it might be that, if you dip below, 12, you're going to move, or is it just more you're kind of reading the tea leaves?
I feel like there's so many factors that come into it that I was made aware that Wakefield was downgraded when they were issuing for their high school, and it was because they had too much debt. We do not have a lot of debt. We don't have any excluded debt on our books, so that's going to help us. We still have very strong reserves. I still think our position is going to be strong to keep our AAA bond rating, but they don't ever tell you what percentage of reserves they really need you to have. They never quote it for you, but you hear, 12 to 15%. And so I think we're in the range for this year, but if we had to use this kind of free cash next year, I don't know that we'd stay in the range. And I don't know if that would be enough to knock us out of AAA, and we've got a lot of good things to our advantage in terms of strong financial management and strong reserves and low debt, that we pay our debt off very quickly. All those things are viewed very positively, so it's hard to know what would swing it the other way. I think for Wakefield, I think they were saying it had a lot to do with them having a lot of debt and like not putting enough money into certain areas, or, like not moving money into the OPEB or something of that sort. So we've been doing the best we can with all of those things, and we've been funding for OPEB even back when a lot of other communities weren't. We are viewed as a very strong financial management community, and they've always said that they like the way we do things. The only negative comment, or not negative, the only comment they've ever made on our financial policies is that they like that we borrow and pay off quickly, and that they would like to see our policies related to that be more strong to ensure that financial managers or town managers in the future feel the same way about paying off debt quickly. We do have something from FinCom that says that we'll borrow for the lowest possible affordable term, but not specific, like this much money you have to borrow for this range. Nothing that's like would force a person to do it with the shortest possible term. That's the only comment that we've ever gotten that was not negative, but they would like, you could make that a little bit stronger, but other than that, you're doing great. I'm hopeful that we will stay at AAA, because like I said, we don't have very much debt. We have no smooth debt at this point. I think we're in a good position to stay where we are. I'm concerned about the amount of free cash we have to use to balance these budgets, and this has gone up every year. We're in a spot where it could really impact us, because we're right at the cusp of maybe not having what they would like us to have in reserves.
Chair, on that last one on the policy, is that something that you set, or is that a FinCom? Just to dig into that one, as far as like if there was a policy that there was a tranche that we borrow for a certain amount of time, is that something that FinCom sets? Or is that
FinCom
something
set it in right after we had our last override in 2018. So I want to say it was done in 2019. We had done an OPEB funding policy. We had done a financial update, financial debt package, borrowing package that you guys had updated at that time. And we updated the language to say that we would do the shortest term possible that was affordable. But we didn't say, okay, if it's 10 million or less, we borrow for 5 years. Or, we didn't like parameters that would be harder to bend. We put kind of a vague kind of limitation on it.
My recommendation is if we can, as far as an agenda item, maybe we should dig into that, and if that helps, kind of sharing going forward, that might be an agenda item we need to take.
Marianne, I'm not throwing your hand, but just responding to that, yes. So review of financial policies is not on our agenda tonight for the first time in a couple meetings. We do have an outstanding request to the select board to ask the state for a review of those policies. Sounds like that should go back on the agenda for next time. Marianne, please.
Okay, thank you. So just quickly back to the trash contract question and the last minute bid that came in from Republic. So that's still going to be in active consideration in comparison to
Yes.
the other bid? Because I guess my understanding, I was just double checking with someone because I had to replay that part of the meeting. It's not a difference to the town maybe, but to the residents of the town. The original contract was a $35 bulk item fee, right? And my understanding is the Republic is one free a week plus one metal item, and just for the residents of Reading, that would be a huge difference.
Yeah, that's correct. When they came in with their late proposal, that included one free bulk item, which is what residents get now. And waste management, they were at $35, we got them down at $30, so there's a difference there. Sure.
Is waste management going to rework their numbers?
I don't know, Sharon's asking if waste management is going to rework. I haven't got anything or any indication from them, but they may, there was a representative live at the meeting last night. I'm sure she's reported back to her superiors, and maybe they are. We've gone back and forth with them on bulk, even with some meetings with the weekend, and they had said 30 was the best they could do, but maybe this changes that.
Yeah, I mean, Ms. Herrick is here, so she can confirm. Didn't you say something in a recent meeting that you heard like Saugus had some really, it was 2 select board meetings ago, and you quoted a number from Saugus that was really low, and I felt like Reading was getting put upon with this number.
Yeah, it's in interesting. Karen Herrick Select Board, I
That's what she said. Go ahead.
spoke to them a little bit, and they actually have embedded in their regulations, so I'm not sure if that's a bylaw or a regulation, that they will issue these $2 bulk item things, which to me says, when they went out to bid, it was in their RFP. Anybody who wants to collect our trash better be willing to
So that was
help us.
acceptable, you know, just to with
It's
one
still
item.
existing, it's not going away, I mean, that's just, we could dig a little further, that would take us
Yeah,
time.
that's not the point of this meeting, it just seems like 35, even if it
Oh,
just
yeah.
was scaled for the size of the item. So I'm glad you guys are taking another look at it.
We are, I
It's not-
think the issue is, obviously, I think they said they have a facility right in the town which helps with that rate for some reason. So that's what they told us anyway, so that's why it's not the rate for everybody. But yeah, I mean, if we can get a free bulk item, I think that would be a big help to the residents, so that's what we're trying to
Well,
do.
hopefully you have some leverage, thank you.
Yes, we do, thank you.
I have lots of opinions about Republic's pickup service, and none of them are on the agenda, so let's get back to financial stuff. I actually had a couple questions, one of the other folks go first. First, I want to make sure I had what was the total free cash generation? I know, actually, I'm not sure if it's confirmed, that we're working with for FY '25, and how does that compare to the previous years?
Hold on a second. I'll stop sharing what I'm sharing. Where's the stop share? Oh, there it is. Where's the presentation?
One second, I'll leave this back up on the screen.
I'm sorry. I closed the presentation, so I didn't find it. It's on the screen. Look at this on the list, I can see. The slide that shows what you're looking for, and this is it's at the end, I think. So you can see that this slide here shows the 2.77 million coming from revenues over projection, and then $1 million from the expense side, so that's almost 4 million. But then we're getting 1.57 coming back to us from other adjustments, and that would be what I spoke of in terms of the $1 million, over $1 million, if it was $1.35 million that was held last year, and most of that money had to do with the Millette Serms project not being complete and not getting the federal money yet. And so we're getting the 1.57 plus the one, so it's over $5 million. I feel like our regeneration is definitely down. We pull up the other, I don't think I have it open, but what I sent you guys for the free cash, the projections that you guys tend to work with, you can find that. Because it would give you a total, would already be added.
I did find it notable that both revenues came in, the amount of regeneration on both revenue and expense sides was smaller than.
For sure, we're definitely getting tighter and tighter. So I'm going to share this on the screen so you can see. This is the spreadsheet that I give to FinCom to kind of help them make decisions about what's a good use of free cash and keep us above our 7% reserve minimum. But as I said, I'm more concerned about the bond rating, and 7% I don't think will get us to what you're really bond rating. So down the bottom here, this is the favorable variances from the prior years. So 6.18 in 22, 6.49 in 23. We were always over 6 million. Last year was under, but a part of that 1.57 is coming in from money held from the prior year. Like it probably should have been here, but it's here because, so this year definitely was slower for regeneration, although that 5.7 is really closer to 4 million that we had in the current year. But we're getting money that was held in 24 coming back to us because we collected the grant money. So that I had estimated free cash last year to be over 20 million when I calculated it, expecting that we would get the money back from the grant in time, that I didn't have to deduct it, and we didn't. And so instead of over $20 million, we had, 19.293. So once you get that money the next year, it gets released back to you. And so that's what's happening here. So out of that $5.7 million of regeneration, 1.35 has to do with the prior year, things that they held from us in the prior year because we had deficits, mainly that grant, but other things as well.
I'm not saying anything because I understand. Okay, yeah, ouch.
So, I mean, it's definitely on the decline for
going
sure.
from 6.3 to 5.7 hurts, going from what really would have been 7.6 to what really would have been 4.3 is a cliff. So, all right. All right. I did have one other question on the excluded debt coming back into the budget here, and the I caught the parts, the absolute amounts, borrowing, looks like we're borrowing 45 million for Killam and 16 for retail. That is, what fraction of the total borrowing is that? Like how much more we borrow the subsequent year?
How much more do we borrow?
Do we borrow, yeah, exactly. So like retail was something like 30, so 16 is going to be close to half, right?
Yeah, it's about half for both projects.
Okay.
But it's based on the cash flows I have in hand right now, and if they change, it could change what I end up borrowing come January. So this is the best information I can put together right now with the cash flows that I have. I don't know of any delays, and so I feel pretty comfortable that it will be those numbers, but it could change. It could be that we need to borrow less, because we only have like a certain amount of time to spend the money, so we have arbitrage, we have to pay back the interest we earn on that money if we don't spend it within a certain time frame. And so you got to be careful about what you borrow. So I tend to look at the cash flows very closely when it comes to figuring out how much can I borrow and not be subject to arbitrage. So that's right now where I'm at, is 45 million, about approximately half for Killam and approximately half for Recal. And I plan to borrow again in February of 2027. So I based on what I could see for spending on the cash flow, I tried to grab all of that. And for Killam, I didn't assume any of the reimbursements from the MSBA because I know that they do hold some things back towards the end. That until they audit and finish, there's money that's held back. So I feel like it gives us more cash flow if I don't count the MSBA money. So that's the way I did it. So I'm thinking that's where we'll be. It could change. I can give you an update if anything were to change. But the cash flows, I have no knowledge of any delays with either project.
Thanks. Karen, see you.
Excellent work, Sharon. We have not been able to stump you yet, so, okay, I'm going to still try. Okay, so a couple questions on two different topics. Can their treasurer challenge bond counsel to get you the answers you need? Like, our neighbor just had their rate.
Find out
Yeah.
what's involved.
Yeah. Oh, I'm worried. Wakefield just got downgraded to AA+.
Yeah.
If I were to borrow today at that, what would my rate
What
be?
would the difference?
Yeah.
I can certainly request information from the bonding agent that says, okay, if we happen to get downgraded,
Yeah.
what kind of interest rate would we be looking at?
Okay.
They could give me that.
Okay, that's good to know. The other thing I keep asking, and I want to ask it in a public forum, is that, so we understand from the Department of Energy when they were out here, is that the geothermal tax credits, direct tax credits, did not go away with the big beautiful bill. So I just want to make sure that we're all over that, because we're making a huge investment in these geothermal wells, and that was a very, very generous tax credit. So, whoops, that's a chunk of money. So
I definitely will look into what the rules are. I thought it had to be, the work had to be done for us to put in for the rebates.
well, and yeah, I think you're right. But I also think that what I understand is that you kind of have to submit a pre-submission, like there's a little early work we would want to do, like we know what the design is going to be now, or we should be close to that. So I believe it has to be submitted, pre-submitted, like a doctor, to the doctor, it's like, send this to the insurance company and see what they say, so I know what's coming. And then, yeah, or if you need help, like I just want to raise this, because you're obviously you're busy. And then, and the reason I wanted to bring that up as well, because what the community voted on was a financial plan that did not, because of concerns, genuine concerns, that did not reflect that potential for us. So that's kind of that's a big area that could be a spot of sunshine for us. Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions on the free cash projections, financial forecasting topic? All right, thank you, Sharon. Echoing what others have said, put in a tremendous amount of work and more little creativity to figure out how we could have a plausible budget for next year at 3% operating budget increase. So thank you. All right, continuing with our agenda. So as I mentioned earlier, we are, for reasons that no one can control, we are the CPA study committee is underrepresented today. I'm the only one here in person, and I'd rather not present my own committee. That's just sort of awkward. You guys are not for me anyway. So if anyone has any questions or would like to say something about the topic, it is on the agenda. We'll give that opportunity, but otherwise we can move along to the next topic. Cool. So next on the agenda is the Finance Committee asked the school department in particular for more information on the school outlook. Of course, we heard a bit about some of the adjustments being made, and there was particular questions about, as we all know, the federal government is doing all kinds of novel things that may have novel implications for state and local budgets. So we'd like to hear if there was anything with that we should be aware of in the future here. Please, Tom.
Phil's going to provide just a very brief overview. Sorry, I can. Phil's going to provide some very brief overview of just a little bit of the landscape of both the federal level and state level. As you can imagine, there's a ton of uncertainty, so we will do our best to be as precise and transparent as we can, but also recognizing that the context is very uncertain. So I just don't want you to think Phil may be dodging questions. I think we are doing our best to be as transparent with the context. So.
Appreciate that. Please, Tom. Cameron's going to get worse.
The what? Sorry. As Tom said, I'm going to keep this really brief because I'm not real good at predicting the future, especially with what's going on right now. So I'm going to tell you what I know. So the first question that had come up previously was, what's the impact for this year in terms of our federal grants? We talked specifically about our entitlement grants, which are Title I and special ed primarily. There is no impact on the current fiscal year because those are actually fiscal year 25 funds. So those have already been approved, and that's going along just fine. One of the questions was, well, then what does it mean in terms of state funding, things like that? There were 3 questions we got originally, so I'm going to combine those 2 together. I'm not sure what the impacts are, but if you are very interested in this, and I can't show it to you, but the state has a website set up called The Impact of Trump Administration and Congressional Cuts on Massachusetts, which I found, which I think is kind of, for the most part, can answer your questions far better than I can in terms of some of the things that are going on. So I will send out this link to everybody tomorrow, just so you have it and take a look at it. I found it very useful so far. Again, in terms of the schools, the only impact that there may be for fiscal year 26 would be a little bit on the food service programs, but most of those programs that they're talking about, we don't utilize. They're more for districts that have much lower, or I should say, much higher needs of students than we have. So for the most part, I think we're okay for fiscal year 26. As for 27, your guess is as good as mine as to what may happen. I think the entitlement grants won't be touched. I mean, they're there. You know, they may come in a different way, whether they want to do block grants or something like that, but I think the entitlement grants will be okay. You know, we've applied for a lot of one-off grants over the last few years. We'll see what's out there. You know, the district does a very good job of finding those grants, and so we'll see what happens with that. I don't see any impact on the food service program. As Mr. Wise said earlier, most of that right now is being funded out of the other revenue, so I believe that should be okay. And given how well our food service program is going, I certainly hope it stays that way. We're doing a lot of good things over in food service. So that was on that. The last question we had was, they were talking about student population, if there be any changes in student population, and I would direct you all, if you want, to go back to the school department's budget book for fiscal year 26, and on pages about 57 through about 61 or 62, there's a series of graphs that I put in showing the makeup of the student body and some of the different ways to look at it. The things that you'll notice is that the student body in Reading has changed, especially over the last 10 years, in terms of the student population we have had a sizable increase in terms of the students who have higher needs than we would have had previously. And so if you look at, in terms of students who are first language is not English, well, you know, and also now they're called ELs now, or ELLs, English language learners as they used to be called. You know, we've gone from less than 0.5% of the overall student population. I think now, I'll go back and check the numbers, it's almost 6%. So, I mean, relatively speaking, that is a big change. High needs students have gone up considerably. And so if you look at all that in terms of the changing demographics of the student body, that is what's changing. And so while the overall student population hasn't really changed that much, the needs of those students have changed and they've increased. So that's what makes it a challenge within the school department to be able to, you know, stay within our parameters of the budget. And the last thing I want to put in that wasn't in here, but you know, if we go back and we look at some of the changes, some of you may or may not recall, OSD is responsible for setting the rates for special ed programs that we have to send our students out of district to. And up to about 2022, historically, we've been running about 2%. In fiscal year 24, it was 14%. That was the year that all of us business managers lost a lot more of our hair. It's come back down, but they're still running over 3%. So, you know, the challenge for us in terms of the out-of-district is their rates of increase far exceed, you know, 2.5 for any district or any city or town in the Commonwealth. And there's just that disconnect between what they're doing and then what we're getting in terms of any funding or reimbursement back from the state. The one area that I always get concerned about is the special ed circuit breaker, which by law is supposed to be 75%, but that is only if they have enough money. As of right now, for 26, it's at 75% for teachers and things like that, but right now the reimbursement rate that they're forecasting for transportation, I think, is around 63%. So hopefully by the end of the year, that will go back up to 75, or they'll pass a supplemental next summer, we don't know. But again, that's one of the wild cards when it comes to the budget, because that's one of the first areas where if they're running short of money, they will reduce those reimbursement rates. And so that's another reason why we look at trying to forecast what's going to happen with our out-of-district or overall special ed expenses. It's very difficult. You know, we're constantly looking at it every day. So that's the update that I have. I hope I kept that short enough. Any questions that I can't answer?
Questions for me? Don't see any questions. Short and sweet.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so continuing with our agenda, it's now a chance for the committee to discuss budget guidance and uses of free cash that we will recommend in the FY27 budget. The actual recommendation is only going to be on the agenda for our meeting next week, but we can start talking about it now. I think Sharon, that's exactly the slide I was going to ask for, was the one that has the what the operating budget percentage is and what the actual number is. I think for comparison, last year was 6 even.
It was 6.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think it started at 5.8, so we ended up having to add because of health
Yes,
insurance.
last year's guidance was 5.8, actual was 6 because reasons are, I think, health insurance, but yes.
It was health insurance, yeah.
So, I guess what my thoughts on my own, but I'm going to be a good chairman, we'll go first. Anyone, comments, questions, or thoughts? I was like, hit the straight table because I can't see that. This budget forecast might be one of these, like, I have nothing nice to say, so I say nothing in all situations. I don't see any hands on Zoom either. One thing that hasn't been, so Sharon shared a bit from her free crash projection spreadsheet that she shared with the group, which I almost said free crash, and it's a bit how it feels. The thing that jumps out about that spreadsheet, well, first, I mean, the one thing that jumps out if you look at this spreadsheet is that a really big change in the operating budget, it's like cutting all the way down to 2.5%, the number is still well north of 6 million. The absolute value doesn't change much because it is driven by accommodated costs and not driven by the operating budget. The other thing was in the free cash projection spreadsheet where I looked at the 7% number, and we have a future agenda item about that, it sounds like, but assuming 7% is the number in the spreadsheet, and for all projected increases, we got under 7% in FY28 regardless. So there wasn't a budget cut that was enough, not that we were contemplating at least, to make the difference between FY28 and FY29 based on those projections. And that even includes looking at the, if you double the projected regeneration, Sharon always uses 3 million. In the past, that's always been low by more than 50%. On the other hand, this year's actual regeneration was more like 4 and change. 3 isn't as far from that as it used to be, so. Sharing those observations. Yeah, I'm going to do the thing where I sit quietly for a minute, awkwardly, until someone says something. Oh, I know, wait, thank you, man.
I'm always getting this wrong, but we have school committee and select board and town manager here. So when are all the current collective bargaining agreements up? Is it 26 or 27? Because we may be be able to get by this year, but I feel like that's going to be something looming. Is it 26 or 27 when they're up? That 27?
27.
Sorry, it's FY27.
For both schools and.
For both schools.
So that means by next August, we have to have an idea of what we can afford to offer them for their new contract?
That would be helpful.
Right, I know we can't discuss it in public, but that's just in light of these kinds of increases and things to think about. And maybe it's going to be more challenging next year, but I don't know if there's anything we can do now.
That's a good observation. I was thinking of trying to drink too. Okay. Question?
Karen Herrick, Select Board. So one of the things we've talked about is, briefly on the Select Board, but more on the Finance Committee, is, insurance contributions. And I think comments were made that we were extremely, extremely generous. And what I don't understand is whether that is tied into the collective bargaining or whether that's a separate decision. If it's 25 and we move to 30, do we do that a year ahead of time or, yeah, so I'd love to.
The hours a week they work to get health benefits?
No, just the employee contribution. We talked about, how we compare, like showing, just being ready for that. Because I think the comments were made were that we're still like, there's room for us to move. I'll just summarize it that way. That was my understanding.
So currently, the employee pays 29% and
Okay.
the town pays 71%.
Okay.
It is part of that PEC agreement that we have to negotiate, so it definitely will be part of the conversation. But it's not a decision we can make without the PEC.
In the PEC, I don't know what that is.
It's the Public Employee Commission Committee. Yeah. And it's representing every collective bargaining board that we have in the union. So there's members on it from each one of the board, people on the board, unions. So the school committee, the school teachers board, the paras, all of them have somebody on there representing their union so that they can kind of come to something that we all agree upon.
Okay, so then I guess we just need to understand, are we more generous than most of our peers? In which case, is there a little room to move there, which can help us? And then timing, do we do that before the collective bargaining comes up or is it one and the same? And I leave that to you guys.
I do feel like we're about the same as others. I don't think that we're overly generous, but it definitely is an area where money is tight enough that it has to be talked about.
Thank you.
Looking for any other questions? I see a raised hand on Zoom. Sean Grant, please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Karen, to your point, I think Sharon answered kind of where we are relative to, municipal competitors. I would highlight that, relative to the commercial market, the typical cost sharing that you see, the average sort of cost sharing across the industry is about 25% for family plans and about 75% to the employer. So, if folks are thinking, public benefits are so much richer than what I get at my job, it's actually the opposite, as we sit here today.
So ask Mr. Brand who he works for.
I'm not sure that the question about Mr. Brand's employer, I don't think that's necessarily relevant. He does not offer. But yes, is
I didn't hear the question, but my point of reference was Kaiser Family Foundation. That's a national average. It wasn't any particular employer.
Yes. There we go. No one's privacy is compromised. Appreciate that.
You can find me on LinkedIn.
I was gonna say, it's not-
Yeah, exactly. It's also not, it's not a state secret.
Thank you.
Most of those individuals are on LinkedIn at this point. All right. Emily, please.
I'm trying not to hit you in the head, so thank you for sharing this slide, Sharon. I think it's really helpful to see that the relative free cash usage, depending on the percentage, is really almost negligible. We've had a couple of rough years of accommodated costs just skyrocketing, so I think we are where we are. I have a question though about this, the comment the town can work with a 2.75% budget, and if we go higher, we've talked a little bit in the beginning about the sharing with the schools and being on the same team. What would be the implication of 2.75 for the school not getting that additional bump?
In terms of if you went for 2.75 as opposed to the 3?
Yes, sorry.
It would definitely make a tighter budget for the school, and they may need to have some cuts for an English student.
Thank you.
For anyone who can't see Tom in the room, Tom is nodding, so that backs up what Sharon said. Anything else before we take our discussion again?
I can say one thing. I just
Oh,
want to
sure,
emphasize one point on that too, is that we do,
Come to the mic, please.
sorry, I think just trying to save time too. I think the number that we just are comfortable sharing too is that our level service budget of what that would cost versus the 2.27% increase, which I think includes would be assuming the 3% here for us, is still about $822,000. That's still a pretty big gap for the schools to close. So I think that's a gap that, again, I think we're going to be really creative. We're going to do everything we can, and I don't think that's going to result in major impact on our day-to-day student experience. But I think if we have to push further than that, I think that would be a much more challenging gap to close.
All right. Anything else on this? We will pick this up again a week from now when we actually vote on grants. Oh, sorry. No, Finance Committee is meeting on the 15th. Yeah, just for I think it's because the back-to-back meeting weeks are because we have to make sure that we will also be voting on financial articles in subsequent town meeting. And we have to get those votes in time to prepare the printed warrant report for subsequent town meeting. So, all right. So in that case, let's continue with the actual agenda. We did not do liaison reports at the beginning, so we didn't want to make everyone sit through them, but we now have an opportunity for that here. Anyone like to share reports from other committees? I see Jeffrey reached for a microphone.
Actually, I mean, telling you I shouldn't do it, I don't actually have any financial report that, from the school committee. They spent a long time talking about MCAS results, which is somewhat interesting, given that the state recently voted, the state voted to remove that as a graduation requirement. But there are certainly some good results, and still some areas of concern and focus going forward.
Marianne?
I think, just to build on what Jeff said, if I could tell a bit of the ARPA work, I think it showed that our core had a positive impact spending that money on the English results, and I'm pleased to see that. I think we've gotten into some of the important select board updates, and I almost hesitate to bring up the topic of Burbank, but I think, like, the select board might not be in agreement, but I've heard proposed at the school committee meeting, and someone else proposed it, there may be an agreement to assign some revenue coming to the town from rent on Burbank to pay for unified sport, maybe, subject to town meeting approval. Trash compact was not approved. They heard from the MPA turn back track, which for the public, there's a couple of meetings coming up, but it was just more for information on the select board. So, and you know, even though this isn't them, if the public happens to be watching us, that CPDC approved the Primrose School, that didn't really come up from select board, but we're in a news catch-up mode, so that's what I know has happened this week. Thanks.
Thank you, Marianne. I see Jim got his hand raised.
Yeah, just quickly, in terms of the library, they did approve a bid for the terrace project, so that will be going ahead. And again, all of the money for that project, it's all being funded and has already moved, from the foundation. So that's all like from foundation that's paying for that terrace project. But it should be good when it's completed.
Be right there. That's on the door of this room.
Exactly.
Anyone else? No? CPA study. Tonight, notwithstanding, CPA study committee has been continuing to try to reach out to other committees. I understand they're probably my
Compatriots on the committee sat through a very long CPC meeting on Monday to present to them at the end of the meeting when they were on the agenda. Hats off to them. Anything else, or should we move on to future agendas? So we have, oh, she pulled this out already, an outline for agenda next week. I'm pulling up what I have so far for next week. Obviously, we have to discuss the vote on the use of free cash to support the FY27 budget, so the process can continue. We have to discuss and vote on financial articles in the warrant, so that report can go together. It sounds like this wasn't in the agenda yet, but it sounds like there's a lot of interest in financial policies, and in particular, we get how that and other things potentially impact our bond rating. Indeed, I think that will clarity any future conversations on overrides. They're going to be tied to the impact on bond rating. We're going to want to understand that better. Other topics that we should put on the agenda for just a week from now.
Did you want to put CBA back on for next week?
Sorry, what was that?
Did you want to put CBA back on for next week?
That's a good question. I think let's put that in pencil. I haven't had a chance, obviously, to talk to that committee yet, and indeed we won't have a meeting between now and then, but we also don't need a, quorum of us to decide to show up. As long as this committee invites them, they can come. So. All right, then we have minutes to approve. Which you should use the microphone for.
The microphone that I'm hogging, sorry.
So, somewhere, hold on, sorry, back in the packet. Jackie, there's a small edit to my liaison reports. I think it starts, I talked about COA. Sorry, I'm scrolling, so this is a big packet. So it says, it reads, the Recreation Committee is planning to develop an operational plan. So the topic came up at the Recreation Committee, but it's actually town staff through Jenna Wood and Community Services is planning to develop the operational plan. So if we could make that minor adjustment, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions about the minutes? Yes, I lost my Zoom window. Nobody's got their hand up. Oh.
Move to approve the minutes for September 17th as amended.
Second?
Thank you, Jeffrey. Thank you, Ed. Any last comments or discussion before we vote? Seeing none. Joe McDonough?
Yes.
Mark Zarro?
Yes.
Jeffrey Corum?
Yes.
Ed Ross?
Yes.
Marianne Downing?
Yes.
Tom Sullivan?
Yes.
Emily Sisson?
Yes.
And Joe Carnahan, yes. That's it. To adjourn. Thank you, Jeffrey. Thank you, Emily. Voting to adjourn. Joe McDonough?
Yes.
Mark Zarro?
Yes.
Jeffrey Corum?
Yes.
Ed Ross?
Yes.
Marianne Downing?
Yes.
John Sullivan?
Yes.
Emily Sisson?
Yes.
And Joe Carnahan, yes. Thank you all very much. We are adjourned. Oh, sorry, before we turn off the Zoom stuff, select board needs to adjourn, so I should give you a chance to do that.
Thanks, Chair. I can't hear Karen or Karen.
All right, I think that was a motion to adjourn sorry, I didn't have Mike's, but I can repeat that we had a motion to adjourn from Karen Rose Gillis and a second from Karen Herrick.
All right, I'll take a roll call. Karen Herrick,
Yes.
Karen Rose Gillis,
Yes.
Chris Haley, yes.